Hi, friend. It's Kia Jarmon of KiaJarmon.com and MEPR Agency. And I had the great pleasure on August 28th, 2019, to be a participant at the Williamson Inc. Women in Business Annual Summit. I was the kickoff speaker for the Women in Business portion. And I unfortunately did not record the session, and it was not recorded that day. And so many people asked for the script. But if you are a speaker, then you know that the script will not give you quite the same texture as being on stage. So I wanted to re-record it for you. So I recorded the audio for you so that you can get a glimpse into what happened on that day. It was very powerful. It was magical. It was dynamic. I've heard lots of great feedback. My topic was your mission within the mission. And my hope is that you're able, when you leave this conversation or what you hear in this audio, it's a TED style talk. My hope is that you're able to begin writing out your personal mission statement, because remember, you are not able to help someone else when you have not helped yourself first. All right, I hope you enjoy. I would define myself as a born entrepreneur. I came out of the womb, or rather I walked out of the room, as an adult, disrupting spaces and taking risks most of you are unwilling to take, like not having a steady paycheck or access to health care. Welcome to America. I was given the name Kiss with the Fist by a colleague. It was a super clever way of saying I'd walk hand in hand, arm in arm, and we would swing them as we got real close to your goals. But don't get too comfortable, because I'll also kick you in the ass. I'm the agency director for the boutique public relations firm, MEPR Agency, where I work at the intersections of community, culture, crisis, and communication, challenging most people's very linear thinking to my very circular approach. But out of all the titles that I answer to, at my core, I am a teacher. I remember being in my parents' basement with my green chalkboard and my workbooks all spread out. And ironically or tragically, I'm not sure which one, all of my students were named Tony and Michael. Maybe that was the precursor to a life standing up to a patriarchal society. What I've gathered about being a teacher is that their responsibility is to guide us, to mentor us, encourage us, and remind us how to stay disciplined in our mission, the journey that we're on, and the assignment that we are given. My motto is to learn a lesson or teach a lesson. So today I want to share the lessons that my teachers imparted in me that helped me to discover my personal mission, with the hopes that it will help you discover your own. Do you remember the first assignment you were ever given? I can recall my kindergarten teacher, Miss Burgess, at Whitsett Elementary. I remember she was a really nice teacher, and she always took a special liking to me because she would often see my father bring me to school, and at the time, you didn't see a lot of dads in the classroom, so she was always looking out for me. I remember that when I had chicken pox and they were no longer contagious, she would help put calamine lotion on my scars because I had scratched them so much. And I remember that she would leave me in charge when she stepped out of the classroom. So I was the name taker and the resident tattler. Susie Jane, put your head down. I see your eyes. Because back then we played quiet mouse, still mouse, and you put your head on the table. But I choose to think of our relationship in another way. I believe she saw something in me that I hadn't yet seen in myself. She saw a leader. I was responsible and someone she can trust to maintain the order that she had set in her classroom. We went through the rest of the year in much the same fashion, with her teaching and guiding me and building with me. And maybe it shouldn't have been a surprise, but it was when I was chosen as Student of the Year. If you look ever so closely, you will see my dad's reflection in the picture. I couldn't bring it today because it's his trophy. And he did so well. She taught me a really great lesson that my behavior, what can now be described as my character and my integrity, could be a model. And by strengthening that character, my role in this world would be amplified, not just for me to covet, but for others to see and experience. because it's my belief that you can only be what you have access to see. So it's important that we see images reflected around us that encourage the core tenets of a solid character. Leading a mission-driven life requires that you go beyond the nowness and physicality of where you are and instead allow the moment to serve as a footstool to the journey. I want you to think about it like this. You can't get up a smooth mountain. We have to rely on the jagged edges to help us along the way. As I continue thinking about the lessons of my teachers, I think of those who journeyed up the rough side of that mountain. There are two women who've been a part of shaping my life and also America's fight for freedom. On the walls of my bedroom at my parents' house still to this day are the photos of these women. One of them made a strategic decision not to move from her seat on a crowded bus in Montgomery, Alabama, so that a white man could take a seat. It wasn't that she was in the wrong section, it was that she was the wrong complexion. And the other suffered immeasurable pain from a head injury, also known as a metal object thrown at her head by a slave master. But she went on to lead hundreds of slaves to freedom over the course of nearly 20 trips going from south to north and north to south. Rosa Parks and Harriet Tubman are my teachers. They taught me how to climb the movable ladder. And ladies, you know what the movable ladder is. It's where society tells you that success is, and just as soon as you get there, they move the ladder. They encouraged me day in and day out as they were perched on my walls to push towards resilience and strength so that I could one day help others get to freedom. They taught me it was my responsibility to save room and space for someone else, giving them the opportunity to fight a little less and not climb nearly as far. I would describe both of them as a light. They actively lived the blueprint for how we are to help others, fearlessly and without question. They showed us how we can navigate dark spaces like Harriet Tubman or sit in moments of pressure like Rosa Parks. And here's what concerns me, because each day many of you are walking into these dark and pressure-filled bullpens, but here's the problem. For some of you, you are guiding people, but you have no guidance. Your own light is dim. And what happens when you have a dim light is that you begin to dim other people's light. Because that lack of self-awareness and firm positioning allows ego to creep in. And that's when you begin to say it's you or me versus using words like us and we. While ego can protect us by encouraging us to have high self-esteem, it also can harm us by overinflating our sense of self and telling us that we are more important than the mission. But we all have a role in ensuring the mission gets accomplished. Every single person sitting at the table has some part and parcel of how the job gets done. It's not just one person's job, it's all of our job. But teachers like Rosa Parks and Harriet Tubman give us the picture of what happens when you're so clear about your direction, your compass point, that even when you get off course, you'll find your way back. I think about the Underground Railroad and the symbols and signs that told you where to go and where not to go, and how scary it must have been to stumble into the wrong places, all to benefit other people. And at the time, and I still believe it's true today, it was unsafe for Black people to read and to write and to travel, to speak up, to do anything other than what the master allowed. Or let me say it more plainly, you'd be killed, you'd be lynched and maimed and drugged by a horse and split in half. But for those symbols on those houses and on those trees in those dark nights was most unreachable and uncomfortable and all the time unbearable, those symbols got them back on track because they were the light and they served as symbols. Your mission is to be a lighthouse. It will shine even in the dark places. And when I think about the unending flame of action and service, there's only one organization that comes to my mind. I've been a member of Girl Scouts for 30 years. I'm a lifetime member, and I've had a long documented history with the organization. And as a young girl, like most young girls around middle school and around high school, you want to quit. But again, if you have a parent like mine, no is a complete sentence. because you're trying to get over what I call the 3 C's: cookies, crafts, and camping. And let's not forget those ill-fitting uniforms. They just ride up in all the wrong places. So I began asserting myself into activities outside of what was traditionally known in Girl Scouts. I began speaking a lot more on behalf of the organization. I was traveling across the city, going to capital campaigns, doing fundraisers at cocktail parties, because remember, I'm an adult, right? So I am having all of that fun talking about an organization I love so much. Around that same time, I met someone who was on the board of directors for what was then called the Girl Scout Council of Cumberland Valley. And she would commute in from Georgia to go to those meetings, and she took a real special interest in me. And at one point I asked her, I want to strengthen my speaking skills. What should I do? And she said, go to Toastmasters. So at 16 years old, I drove myself to a Brentwood chapter of Toastmasters. I never spoke at any of those meetings. I was absolutely terrified because everybody was 40 plus years old, which now as an adult, I realized they probably were only about 25. But I appreciated going and listening and observing. And now I get paid to stand on stages and speak for a living. Eugenia Clark is now the president and CEO of Girl Scouts of Middle Tennessee, and she taught me how to find the places where my voice could grow. And by doing so, I can now provide a platform that unlocks others' voices the same way she did for me. She taught me that my mission is only as strong as the legacy that I'm willing to leave behind. And in particular, it's only as strong when I can make intentional space for others and their voice, or use mine on their behalf. This is about more than an invitation just to take up space at a table, but an opportunity to actually convene the table or lead the conversation. This is about leveraging your privilege. Many have said it before, but I remember it from First Lady Michelle Obama the best. She said, send the elevator back down if you're lucky enough to reach the top. And I would go even further and say, get back on the elevator and ride it down and get the person and take them to the top. To continue my story with Eugenia, I later went to work at Girl Scouts. And one day she said, why are you working here? Are you getting a degree in early childhood education, or what is it that you're doing? And I told her I was pursuing a degree in business, and I routed off a list of things I enjoyed doing. And she said, well, that sounds like public relations. She could have stopped there with a couple of email introductions, but instead she arranged lunches with some of the top PR executives in the city. And then she also attended those meetings with me. After my last meeting, I had an internship, and it was paid. She came back down on the elevator to make sure I could get to the top. I am a genius legacy, and I can't let that down. So here's my mission. Just in recap, I'm here to inspire others by modeling what I'd like to see in the world. I'm here to unlock the door and shine a light for someone coming behind me. And I'm here to leverage my privilege and use my platform for voices to be heard, even if it is my voice on their behalf. As I was going through these experiences, much like being on the side of that mountain, I was unaware of my next step. But like many teaching moments, it requires that we complete the assignment, even if it might appear unimportant, unattainable, or even misunderstood. Kind of like Pythagorean's theorem. So I taught you how I came to understand and discover my own mission, but I want to make sure you also leave with at least the beginning of your own mission statement. A few years ago, I developed a workshop called Your Mission Within the Mission. The prompting for such a class was that for 15 years, I've been asking leaders, why do you do this work? And why is this work so important? And there was almost never an answer, or there was lots of humming and hawing, and they just didn't know how to get to why they did this work outside of the organization's mission. And I know, much like you, much like myself, that you're here to do more than shuffle papers on your desk at work, get your daily swearing session in as you drop your kids off at school, swipe right on Tinder, or be down in people's DMs. I know that you are here to do more than that. I want you to take a moment and think about when you received your first assignment. Now, it could have been around 5 and 6 like mine, or it could be 11 and 12, but I don't want you to make it super profound, because mine wasn't so profound when I was realizing I was a bossy, demanding, assertive, tattling 5-year-old. I had to do some real self-discovery and re-engineering of my thinking to get here. And there are two reasons why this moment of discovery is so important. One, because I think many of us have forgotten the innocence of who we were. We've forgotten the joy, the contentment, the days chasing rainbows and splashing in the rain. We have simply forgotten. And two, I think the reason why this is important is because at the time where you remember your assignment is likely when you began to understand what was happening between your head and your heart. So if you don't remember, it's okay. You may have to ask someone. I'd actually encourage you to ask someone who you were every 5 to 7 years because it's very easy to forget. Now, what I will warn you is that they're going to ask you, is everything okay? Do you need to see someone? Because asking someone who you were will, of course, prompt such a question. But if you have parents like mine, then you can take a visit to the Museum of You, also known as their home. Have them tell you a story that helps you remember the reasons why you were placed here. Because as you trace these stories and remember these teachers, the lessons you're going to find will begin to overlap. That's where your mission lives. So here's my really quick story. Several years ago, I visited with my dad, and he pulled out a series of things as he often did. And when he got to this article, I cried. I cried because it was in that moment that I realized that all the lessons meant something. They meant something more than I knew in the moment, and all the teachers who had invested in me had not done so in vain. I realized in that moment that it was my responsibility to guide other people through their own jagged mountain so that they could strengthen their character, shine a light in the dark places, and build a legacy that sent the elevator back down to get someone else. So as you head back to work, seemingly heavier than you were yesterday and earlier before you got here, I encourage you to write down and place your mission statement on your door, on your desk, make a copy for your car, and even place it in your notes on your phone, because you can only really help someone fulfill their mission when you are crystal clear of your own journey and the assignment you've been given. I want you to complete this sentence. I am here because I am here for him. Thank you.